How to be wealthy. How to be wealthy. I have a day job, as you can see behind me, and during the course of my day job, a lot of teenagers, a lot of young adults, millennials, will comment and will reply through social media, and it's apparent how difficult it is to become wealthy, to be wealthy. How frustrating it is, uh, how impossible it is to be wealthy. So there's anger, there's frustration, there's negativity. And so in an effort to make my personal workspace environment even just one person less angrier, one person happier, to kind of clean up my work environment by at least just even one person and help even one person become wealthy, here it is. Uh, I like what Peter Thiel said about success. If we equate the two, wealth and success, he said, I don't believe in failure. He said, I don't like the whole idea of failing fast, which is a Silicon Valley mantra. Why would you have to learn through your failures when you can just do things right the first time and just keep following the correct process, the right formula for producing wealth and abundance in your life? The problem is, Peter, if you were raised by really successful parents that were socially well adjusted, that went to good schools, that were cultured in the way society actually works, where you know who to kiss up to, what's going to happen as far as industrial trends go, so you know what to have your kids study in high school, in junior high school, so that you can get to the right colleges, so that you can study the right things and meet the right people. And if you have parents that can do all that for you, you're absolutely right. There's no reason you should just learn through failure, right? There's no reason you should learn through failure. All you have to do is just do things as prescribed by your visionary parents who had visionary parents who had visionary parents, all the way from the Mayflower Compact, or all the way from the royal families in Hong Kong, or all the way from, I don't know, the Japanese imperialist families in Korea. So yeah, if you have that kind of blue blood, you're absolutely right. There's no reason you need to just go bang your head up against the concrete and figure out, hey, my head's going to break before the concrete even budges. So what about me? What about me if I had regular middle class parents that didn't know anything about technology, finance, compound interest? These are things that schools don't teach you and your parents don't know. What about me? How do I become wealthy? I'm just now starting to find out about compound interest, and I'm 35 years old. And you know how I found out about compound interest? Well, looking at my credit card bills. So how do I become wealthy? Um, all the really wealthy people, the successful people tell you there's no shortcuts. And the ancients, the really, really ancients. My personal background is in Taoist philosophy, Vedic philosophy. I studied a little bit of the Kabbalah, and everything basically just unites. There are different cultural ways of explaining the exact same thing that people that are absolutely non-philosophical, just pragmatic businessmen will tell you as well. There's really no shortcut. But the old school sages, whether they're Vedic yogis or Taoist masters, they'll tell you, they have a way of explaining it. They'll say, in order to accomplish what you want to accomplish, in order to get from where you are now to where you want to be, whether you want to be happily married, whether you want to be super healthy, whether you want to be 3 stages richer. Let's say you're lower middle class and you actually want to be in the top 1% of 1%, which basically means you own 3 or 5 houses somewhere. You want to get from here to there. You want to do that? You know what the yogis said you'd have to do? You know what the Taoist masters said you had to do? They said, well, this is going to take several lifetimes. That's what they'd tell you. That's what they'd tell you. They'd say, hey, you're going to have to be reincarnated a couple times. That's how hard it is. If your parents didn't teach you about compound interest when you were 3 years old, wealthy people's parents do that. Wealthy people's parents say, hey, baby Bill Gates, here's your allowance. And by the way, if you don't spend it, I'm going to give you, 10% more of it next week. And then whatever you don't spend, I'm going to give you 10% more of it next week. And then baby Bill Gates is like, oh, cool. Now, if I hold my money for 52 weeks in a row, I'll get 52 times 10% more per week. This is how compound interest is taught to the children of the socially successful, of the upper class. And so if you didn't have that benefit, can you even learn it? Can you even learn it when, the masters of old will say, you're going to need to reincarnate yourself a couple times. The practical business leaders of today say there's no shortcut. Guys like Elon Musk don't sleep for 3-4 days in a row. So he shows up to an interview, he's exhausted, his endorphin levels are so low, his hormones are so depleted that the first emotional question they ask, he starts tearing up. He starts crying. That's how hard it is to succeed. Okay, what if I don't want to be able to build a rocket ship and I don't want to have billions of dollars. I just want millions of dollars, because if you've done any amount of calculations in your life, you realize, wow, if I have $10 million right now and I'm in my 30s, I'm not going to make it to retirement. $10 million, nope. You're not going to make it. By the time you figure in inflation, by the time you figure out in any kind of financial disaster where the dollar loses some of its buying power, if you figure in potential, $10 million isn't going to last you. Well, what if I invest it right? Have you seen what happens to investments that go wrong? You put $10 million into housing, land, and you could lose 20-30% of your value compared to the cost of inflation over time. So what's the solution? In fact, you know, it's funny. I think if you're Christian, I think a lot of you guys are Christian because I'm speaking English, and a lot of English speakers are Christian. Jesus said, hey, if you want to inherit the kingdom of God, you got to be born again. It's like you got to throw away your entire life. Basically, all those bad habits, all those things that Peter Thiel was saying, hey, I don't need to learn the hard way. Yeah, you got to unlearn all those things. You got to kill all those poor habits and bad habits and destroy them all. Okay, wow, wait a second. That just sounds like way more work than I was anticipating. That just sounds super painful, super difficult. I basically have to reinvent myself? Yeah. No, absolutely. You know how much you have to reinvent yourself? You got CEOs, extremely successful billionaire CEOs. I don't know if he's quite a billionaire. I haven't looked into him, but Jack, one of the guys that started Twitter, he started Twitter with Biz and Ev, and he's back at the helm. You know what he did? He did, what was it? A 7-day or a month-long meditation retreat where all you do for that month is you meditate and you precisely surgically go through your brain, your mind, your neurology, everything, and you just perform nanosurgery, microsurgery, and then nanosurgery, and say, yep, this isn't working for me. I'm just going to cut that out. This isn't working for me. Cut that out. This isn't, you're taking your neurology that says, hey, I need a fancy car. You're taking your neurology that says, hey, I need to show off to girls in order to appeal. You're taking your neurology that says, hey, if I don't have this much money, then people aren't going to like me. You're taking your neurology that says, hey, no one's going to love me if I don't have a big house on the beach. You're taking your neurology that says rich people are evil because you want to be rich, but you don't want to be evil. So you're giving yourself mixed messages. You're saying rich people are evil. I want to be rich, but I don't want to be evil. Guess what? You're stalemating yourself. It's kind of like saying, anyway, I'm not even going to spend the time to come up with an analogy. You're giving yourself mixed messages where, yeah, it's just like being in a car. It's like putting the car in reverse, but you're trying to go forward. You can't do both at the same time. You're fighting yourself. So, or putting your car in fifth gear and trying to reverse. It just doesn't work. You're fighting yourself. So you become your own worst enemy that way if you say rich people are evil. And so what do I do then? What can I do? Can I super rapidly go through and all the things that if you've ever tried to accumulate wealth, if you've ever tried to save money, you've seen yourself fail. You've seen yourself start to save money a little bit and then to splurge. You've seen yourself save money and then go on a big vacation, or save money and then invest in something that loses 50, 70, 80% of its value, like buying Bitcoin at the top. You've seen all the habits that you have inside your own physiological makeup, the tree, the bonsai tree of your neurology that you're supposed to go prune with the tiniest of samurai shears. Have you seen these shears? These are $5,000 pairs of scissors. For $5,000, you have tiny little pairs of scissors where you see this tiny little bonsai tree and you snip, 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 snip. That's what you have to do to your nervous system, your neurology, your memories, your belief system, in order to totally reinvent yourself, to be born again, to be reincarnated, or to fail 1,000 times really fast, which is exactly saying the same thing that the ancient masters said, just in modern day colloquial terms. Which lucky guys like Peter Thiel never had the experience, or Bill Gates even never had the experience. Just as a side note, Bill Gates, you know how he became #1 richest guy in the world? Well, he invented a computer and he did software for this, that, and the other. Yeah, but how did he get to do that when in the 70s nobody had computers? This is in the 70s. I'm pointing to the importance of parents in this case. Well, his parents were so wealthy that he was in a school district that actually got the very first IBM, and he was able to just destroy these computers. He and Paul Allen together destroyed computers, just tore them apart, and even while this is during an interview, he was explaining this. Even while the next class was supposed to come in and work on these computers were torn apart, and he had all the software code, and he was experimenting with the code and seeing what changes would happen if he changed this line of code and changed this line of code. And so the other students couldn't even get in to use the computers that were in the computer lab back in the 70s when nobody even had computers. So how could he tear apart computers and reprogram them and start coding them in high school when nobody in the world had even access to computers? That's because his parents were so rich that he went to a very, very wealthy school. I think it was a private school. I want to say private school. And he got kicked out of the computer lab. He was banned from computer lab, but he still used it. He still snuck in and used it, and he didn't get expelled from school. You know why? Because his parents were rich. Yes, his parents were rich. His dad is or was a high-powered attorney. So the school is like, oh, high-powered attorney, not going to mess with that. But what about his mom? What about his mom? You know how he got his software into IBM and ended up with a licensing deal on IBM? His mom was on the board of IBM. You think Bill Gates just suddenly wrote a letter to IBM saying, hey, I got software that's going to make IBM's run better and cooler. Like you can actually type stuff and hit print on a dot matrix printer and it comes out. You want to try it? And the CEO of IBM says, sure, Billy, come on in and let's load up. No, that's not what happened. His mom was on the board of directors of IBM. So his mom's like, hey, my son has software. I want to put this in. And the other board members are like, well, any objections? I don't know. None of us have sons that have software for this machine that doesn't do anything except type on a green screen. Tick, 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 tick. Well, I guess we can load it up. That's exactly what happened. That's the benefit of having wealthy parents. So if you didn't have parents, one parent was a super influential political and high-powered attorney, and the other parent was a board member of I don't know, it'd be like being a board member of, and you know what board members do, right? They actually own the company. So they own lots of shares of the company. So it'd be like your dad is Elon Musk at the time, 30 years ago. If you didn't have those parents, and most of you don't, we get back to the root question of how do I at least get to a place in my life where I'm not worried about bills. I'm not just struggling, and if I lose my job in my 40s or 30s, which is only about 10 years away or 5 years away or 10 years behind me, I can't compete. What's worse is even if you're a genius, let's say you're a PhD level mathematics genius, well, you've seen what happened to the smartest PhD mathematical geniuses when they come up against the likes of, I just forgot, Deep Brain? I just forgot the name of the startup just forgot the name of it. That Google bought, the artificial intelligence startup that beat the world's grandmaster of Go with AlphaGo, and it just recently beat all the kids at what was that MMORPG game that they were playing? A bunch of teenagers. This brand new artificial intelligence just destroyed them all. It's understandable that people support AOC and want to not pay their student loans back, and they want the government to tax billionaires 70% so that they get free money without doing anything, because you can't do anything. You do anything and it's unproductive. It's not going to make you any money. So how do you become wealthy under these circumstances? Well, let's go into that in the next episode. I think I've set up the premise. The next episode, we're going to go dive deeper into ancient philosophy, Vedic and Taoist philosophy, so that you actually have a connection to the past. I mean, I suppose I could explain the same concepts just using modern business language, but it's just not as cool. So subscribe to this channel for the next episode.